How's it going, guys? Welcome back to another exciting video. The last video we made some progress on our mobile application. Now it doesn't look any different, but what we did do is made this button actually do something. So now we make that HTTP request to our backend server, and then we retrieve our data, and then we also kind of parse that data into a format that's usable and kind of nice to work with. So with that, now let's actually, in this video, go ahead and utilize that data to kind of have some widgets that are going to be our cards that basically represent our post data. So let's see how we can do that. So currently I have my Android emulator running. I went into my Flutter project and did Flutter run so that I can see it right here. So there should be nothing new. And then I also have my VS Code editor where I open my newsfeed folder that has my Flutter newsfeed project and my simple server. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to open up a terminal, and then I'm going to navigate into my simple server with cd simple-server. And then here I have all these different files, and then I'm going to use this vem thing to activate my virtual environment. So vem bin activate, and then I'm going to basically run my server. So python manage.py run server. I'm going to run this, and then that's going to run my backend server, so I can close this terminal and rest assured that my backend is running. All right, so let's go into this newsfeed, lib source, and then basically we're going to do some work inside of this app.dart. So if we take a look at things right now, we're returning a widget, which is our material app with a scaffold. We have our app bar, body, and then all this other stuff. Currently, our body just has this text, which just returns a text widget that says posts. So that's what we see right now. But in essence, what I want is sort of like a list of my posts. Now, I don't want to put all of this logic right here. Otherwise, there's going to be so much stuff that we have inside of here. Instead, I want to allocate all of this to kind of a separate class that's going to handle returning my widget, which is going to be my list of posts. So I'm going to call this posts. And then basically inside of the constructor for this class, I'm going to pass my posts state. So that's essentially what I'm going to do. So now I have to actually create this. So inside of my source folder, I'm going to create a new folder, which I'm going to call widgets, which essentially is going to be where I put all of my widgets. And in my case, I'm just going to have one, which is going to be this posts. But this is kind of the way that you'd organize it, or at least that I organize it. Then in here, I can make a new file called posts.dart. And then here I can have my class posts, which then I can go ahead and import in my app.dart. Let me also close that side window, just so things are more clear. And then I'm going to import that. And then the path to that is widgets/posts.dart. And then that's going to bring it inside of here. And then what I want is for this to actually be a widget. So I still have some more things I have to do in here. So I'm going to import my package flutter material.dart. So that's going to bring it in here. And then basically this right here, I want it to be a stateless widget. So it's going to be a stateless widget because if I go to my diagram, the thing that's holding my state is this app state thing. So my stateful widget was this app, but my posts is just a stateless widget that just kind of expects to get that state and just display that data. It's not worried about its own sort of state. We have the app that basically handles that part for us. So let's go back to our post.dart and let's go ahead and make this a stateless widget. So you're going to do extends stateless widget. And then because this is a widget, this basically expects this stateless widget.build thing. So that's our build function, which expects a parameter of context. So not content, but context. And then let's also put the return type of widget. And then we have to return some kind of widget. So I'm going to return, let's say for now, a text widget that says posts, just like before. So that's going to go ahead and handle that. And then basically we also have to make sure that we have a constructor that has this posts thing. So that's another thing I have to make sure to kind of remove this final error. So inside of here, I'm going to have some kind of attribute called posts. And then this post thing, as for the type, it's going to be a list. And then let's take a look at this. So this posts, if we take a look at our app state, is this list with a generic type of post model. So in essence, we're going to have the same kind of thing here. A list with a generic type of post model. And then as for our constructor, it's just going to have posts, this dot posts. So we're going to expect that post thing, and then we're going to update this. Now we still get an error here because basically I need to define this to be the correct type, which is going to be of type final. Oh, and then I guess the main reason why this is actually happening is that I also need this post model inside of here. So I'm going to go ahead and import that. So that's coming from /models/postModel.dart. And now with that, we should have all these errors removed. So now we basically allocated this to a separate class. So now if I go ahead and do a hot restart, we should basically see the exact same thing. And yeah, here we are. We see literally the exact same thing. So that's a good thing. So now that means that we can put all of this logic inside of this separate class instead of having things inside of here. And then basically just having a bunch of messy code. All right, so now let's go to our post.dart and see how we can make this widget. Basically what we want to accomplish now is instead of having this text posts, instead I want a list of my posts. So let's go ahead and see how we can do that. So in order to accomplish this, I'm going to want to use a widget called a list view. And that's going to help me to kind of have this list of widgets. So let's go to the Flutter documentation and take a look at how this thing works. So I'm going to go into the widgets catalog. I'm going to go into, and essentially what I'm doing right now is I'm just going into one of these components because right now I have this search like this, where if I search for something like my list view, it's not actually going to show up here. So once you go into one of these components, then you're going to have a different search bar, which is essentially going to help you search throughout the API documentation and look for something like a list view. So let's say if I click into this material app, right now you're going to see the search updated where now it says like search API docs. So now if I search for something like a list view, there we are, list view class, and I can just click this and take a look at it. So let me scroll down to that constructor. And here we are. So we see multiple constructors here. So we have this default constructor and we also have named constructors. So the more popular ones are these two right here. So let's take a look at how these work. So we have this default list view constructor. So this creates a scrollable linear array of widgets from an explicit list. And then we also have this listview.builder, which creates a scrollable linear array of widgets that are created on demand. So what the heck does this mean? So essentially this list view means that, let's say in our example with our posts, we're going to get our list of posts and we're just going to render them all at once onto our screen. Whereas this one, it's going to load them on demand. So it's not going to go ahead and render all of them. It's just going to roll the ones kind of inside of your scroll view. Once you scroll down a bit, it's going to render more, and it's going to keep rendering more as you scroll. So that's essentially how this one works. So kind of with that said, if you kind of think about it, this one here seems like it would be a little bit better on performance in terms of a larger application. So in essence, it scales better, whereas this one doesn't really. In our example with 4 posts, I mean, maybe this one would be better, but I mean, in reality with the real app, I mean, I kind of expect if this thing were to be a real app, then there'd probably be like, let's say even 1,000 posts or more. And then this right here, if we pass 1,000 posts, it's just going to render all of them at once, which is very poor for performance. Whereas this one does more lazy loading. And then instead, it's going to take our 1,000 posts, it's just going to render a few of them. As we scroll down, it's going to keep rendering more. So with that said, this one right here, hopefully I convinced you, is that it's probably the way to go. And now let's go ahead and take a look at some things we have to pass to this. So if I kind of scroll through this a bit, here we see this required property of item builder. This is one thing we need to pass, and another thing is this item count, which is an integer. All right, so let's go ahead and start with that. So list view, and now instead of the default constructor, I want to call that named constructor of builder. And then I want to pass those 2 properties. So one's the count, so it's item count. And then this right here is going to be basically the amount of items that we're rendering inside of this list. So the amount of items that we're trying to render is essentially the amount of posts that we have, right? So if we had 4 posts, then we're going to essentially want 4 here. If we have 100 posts, then we're going to want 100 here. So in order to get this correct value, I can just do posts.length. All right, so that's the first thing. Now the next thing is that item builder. And this thing right here, we can kind of see it being suggested. This thing is a function where we pass a context and an index. So the context is the same context of this thing right here in our build method. And then we also have the index, which is an integer. and then this is going to be a function. So essentially, this thing's going to run for each item. All right. Now, one thing you might notice is we don't have like directly the post. We more just have this index thing to work with, and then with that, we can essentially use it to help us render what we want. So essentially, I'm going to return a widget for basically the amount of items that we have, so whatever's in this item count. And then essentially what I can do right now is I can literally write all the logic for, let's say, making our card, or I guess more like our card for the post. So I can have, let's say, like my container class, and then inside of here, I can go past the child class, if these things don't autofill for me. So I can have like the child class, then the child class can have some more stuff, which is essentially going to be a list of items, because we're going to have like our title, our image, content. I can have all that logic here, but I think it might make a little more sense to just kind of refactor this into its own function. So I can call this something like build post, let's say. And then inside of here, what I want to pass is the post data. So right now I have this index, so how can I get the post data? Well, quite easily. I can just do post, whoops, if I have my cap locks off, I can do posts at index. So this right here is going to access this. And then the first time this thing runs, index is going to be 0. So I'm going to grab posts at 0. So I'm going to have the first post. And then after, I'm going to have the second post, third post, and so forth. So I can utilize this data inside of this method, which we're going to define. So build post. That's what I called it. It's going to expect a post, which is going to be of type post model. This is going to be a function, and I expect this thing to return a widget, so I'm also going to add that as the return type. All right, so we have this now refactored. So let's go ahead and return our widget. So essentially, I'm going to have a container first off, because each post, I want it to have some kind of like margin around it, essentially. So this is how I'm going to do that. I'm going to pass margin. That's one property. And then another property is going to be the child to this. So these are some things I need to fill out, and also some other properties that are useful to this container, also things like padding. So I can have margin, I can have padding, and there's also some other things like, let's say, a border. We're also going to see how to do that. So let's first start with this margin. So for the margin, I can't just pass like some decimal value. What this thing actually expects is to be of type edge insets. And then this thing has named constructors. One that's useful is this dot only, where I can basically pass these 4 different properties, bottom, left, right, and top. And then that way I can individually assign a margin value for each of these. So that's what I want. And this auto-filling is a little bit annoying. So I'm going to have this on separate lines. So first let me start with the left. I want 20 pixels for that. So this is going to be a decimal value of 20.0. Going to have right, which I expect to be 20.0. Going to have top, which I want to be 10. And then I'm going to have bottom, which I also want to be 10. And then make sure to have these commas here and here. That way when you save, it's going to keep the formatting. And now, as for the padding, this is also going to be an edge insets. That's what this thing expects, so edge insets. And then here I'm going to do a dot all. So just on all the properties, I want 20. So 20 pixels for the padding. And then another property is the, border. And then to do that, I can pass this decoration property. And then to this, I expect a class of box decoration. And then for this constructor, if it doesn't autofill this for me, some properties I want to pass to this. Well, I guess the only one I want to pass to this is a border. So this is essentially how you can make a border. And then I can use the class border. And then this thing also has named constructors where I can do all. And then on this, I can have a color and a width, and that's going to make my border. So let me put the commas. Now for the color, I'm going to use colors.blue 300. That's in particular the color I want. That's a very specific blue color. And you can actually like hover here and sort of take a look at some of these. There we go. So now once you highlight it, you can kind of go over and you can see some different things. So right now this colors blue 300, that's one I found that looks pretty decent. So that's this one right here. So that's essentially going to have this exact blue color. And then I can also pass a width, this is going to be the width of this border, and I found that 2.5 pixels looks pretty decent, so not 2.0, 2.5. So I'm going to go ahead and use that. All right, so now that we have these things taken care of, the nice margin, the padding, the border, now let's go ahead and now work on the contents of each of these posts. So remember, this is going to have 4 items. It's going to have the title, an image, the content, and the user. So right now we have access to this child thing, but we have 4 widgets we want to pass in here, but this child only lets us do 1. So how can we pass multiple widgets to this? Well, we're going to use things known as layouts. So let's go kind of back a little bit. All right, so I'm going to go back to this widget catalog. So we took a look at this material components. Another thing that's useful is this layout. So arrange other widgets, columns, rows, grids, and many other layouts. So that sounds like something I want. So we have these single child layout widgets. So this helps us kind of align a single widget, essentially. But basically, I have 4 different things I'm trying to align. So in essence, I want multi-child layout widgets. Here we have this column. This helps us basically align things in a column. And we also have this row thing, which is quite useful as well. And we're going to make use of that as well. In particular, I'm going to make use of this for the user, because what I'm going to want is like this user icon and then the user name. So I'm also going to be making use of this in order to put those 2 items in a row. So first, let's go ahead and start off with this column. And this looks like this auto-filled this property for me. So we have this children property, which is going to be a list of widgets. So I'm also going to put a generic type of widget. And then here we're going to pass our widgets. For now, I'm only going to pass 1. And that essentially is going to be the title of our post. So for this, I'm going to go ahead and pass a text property. And then this text property is just going to have my post.title. All right, so now let's go ahead and go back to our application and see all of this in action. So right now I have my app in its current state. Let's go ahead and do a hot restart. So now I should see basically nothing here because initially our posts is going to be an empty list. So let's give this a moment to update. There we are. And now when I click this button, I'm going to make my HTTP request, which is going to give me my JSON data of posts. And then I'm essentially going to use that list view and grab the title of each post and just have a text widget. So let's do that. And here we are. So now we see that we have that margin around each of these posts. We have that border. And we also have some padding. Now, essentially what I'm going to want is inside of this column, I'm going to want everything aligned to the left. I think that would look a little better. So that's one thing I'm going to quickly do here. So inside of this column, right above this children property, I'm essentially going to pass a property called cross-axis alignment. We're going to pass this cross-axis alignment class and do a dot start. And then what this is going to do is it's going to align things to the left of this column, which I think is going to look a lot nicer. So let's do another hot restart. And then we're going to take a look at that. So right now I have my blank application. Let's make my HTTP request. And here we are. Now all these titles, instead of being aligned in the center like they are by default, they're aligned to the left. All right, so things are looking pretty good. So far we have our title. Now kind of the next steps would be to make this title look a little more like a title instead of just like some normal text. Then to have our image, and then to have our content, and then the user of each post. So that's what we're going to go ahead and do in our next video. Now, before we move on and kind of end this off, I just want to go over some of these properties. So in particular, we saw this edge insets thing, which may have been a little confusing. Also, this container is something that we kind of went through here. So I'm not going to go over that one, but in particular, the edge insets, the box decoration, let's go ahead and take a look at those real quick, just to kind of make sure things are crystal clear. So edge insets, if I go ahead and search for this, and also I want to search for that, not in this search, but if I go ahead and just click on one of these things, doesn't really matter. Where's my column? Let's click that. Maybe even before I do that, let's just kind of take a look at this as well. So in particular, one thing that we made use of here was this cross-axis alignment, where we utilized this cross-axis alignment thing. So let me just show that first. And then this thing right here has a bunch of things you can pass to it. In particular, the center one was the default that we saw. We also have this end. So place children as close to the end of the cross axis as possible. And then we utilize this start one, which placed the children with their start edge aligned with the start side of the cross axis. So this is one thing we saw. And then also we had, if I keep searching, so here we see this list thing, which kind of keeps going to the next line. So the list of widgets where we had this children. So this is another thing we saw inside of this column, and essentially that's where this whole list of children came from. And now let's go back to the other thing I was going to search, which is our edge insets. So here we see this edge insets class. So I just want to show you guys this real quick. So if I go down to the constructors, so in particular, we have this edge insets.all, which creates insets where all the offsets are the value right here, which is our double. And then another one we saw was this only one. So this is a named constructor where we can pass each of these values, the left, the top, the right, and the bottom, which are all doubles. And then we also have other useful ones like this edge insets.symmetric, which creates insets with symmetrical vertical and horizontal offsets. This is also one you might sometimes want to use. So this is sort of that thing, and that's the way that we have to pass things such as the margin and the padding. So this itself isn't going to be like a double value. It's going to be this edge insets class where we essentially go ahead and invoke it. We also saw this box decoration thing, so let's also take a look at that real quick. So box decoration. So if I go to the constructor of this thing, so in particular we utilize this color. So in essence, to pass that color property, or sorry, we used the border and then that had the color property. So the border is this thing right here of type box border. And then this box border, if we take a look at this constructor, so this right here itself is an abstract class. And then here we have this border, which should be one of the implementers. I'm not seeing it here, but oh yeah, here it is, the implementer. I'm a little blind. So now if I take a look at that border and the constructor for that, we should have the, where is it? So we utilize the all named constructor, which essentially is a uniform border with all sides the same color and width. And then here we pass that color, and here we pass that width. So color was of type color, width was of type double. So that kind of goes ahead and demonstrates that. And then also we have some like default values to these named parameters, such as the width by default is 1 pixel. Also, there's some kind of like default gray color. So we kind of just overwrote those things. And let's see what else might have been a little confusing. So this cross-axis alignment thing we looked at. So yeah, I think that basically covers all the new sort of things that we saw in here. So that's going to end up covering everything that I wanted to show inside of this video. So in the next video, we're going to go ahead and now implement the rest of these cards. So I'm going to show you how to extract that image and show it in the card as well as the content of each post, and as well as the user who made each post. So we're going to see how to do all that in the next video. So I hope you guys enjoyed. Make sure to leave this video a like, subscribe to the channel if you enjoy this kind of content. Also hit that notification bell if you want to receive notifications whenever I release a new video. And then there's also links in the description if you want to go ahead and like the Facebook page and the Facebook group. You can go ahead and join that, and that way you can send me messages directly. And also make sure to have those messages somewhat reasonable. So don't leave me messages like you wanting me to implement your like personal project or something. Make it something based on, let's say, web development, app development in general, or something based on a tutorial I've created. That way it doesn't take me hours to answer. So anyway, that'll be everything, and I will see you guys in the next video, which should be our final video, which will wrap up this project. So I'll see you guys there.